Welcome to the Full Monty and a Cup of Joe. Do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast and leave a positive rating and review for us. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get into this. AP Top 25 poll. Georgia still number 1. You got Ohio State at number 2. Texas at number 3. Alabama at 4. And then Notre Dame at number 5. After beating A&M. USC, after beating LSU, jumped up from 23rd to 13th. That's a 10-point or 10-slot rise. So the voters like that they beat LSU. They consider that a real big win. Something interesting is Oregon, who was third last week, they beat Idaho 24-14, and nobody was impressed because they dropped 4 spots to number 7. I thought that was interesting. The only other, K-State moved up to 17th from 18th, so that's good. Iowa moved up 4 spots, they're 21st. And then Clemson, after losing to Georgia, they dropped 11 spots. They're still ranked 25th, though, which I don't like. I mean, they got, all right, we kind of broke down that game a little bit. Clemson stuck with Georgia for the first half, but really got blown out in the second half. I wouldn't vote for them in the top 25 after that. I think you probably disagree.
Well, I think you have to. And the reason that I say I think you have to is because it's game 1. And so if you're going to apply that to Clemson, how many other teams are you going to have to apply that to that have one loss? I mean, how many, is the entire top 25 going to just completely be teams that are undefeated? Basically, it kind of is, but, LSU's got a loss, Clemson's got a loss. These teams historically have turned around. They've had great seasons, good seasons in the past. And I think what the AP knows about Clemson is Clemson can basically just walk on the field and win 7 games. Really, realistically, Clemson can just show up just by virtue of showing up and get 6 or 7 wins. Now, adding Georgia, that certainly toughens up their schedule. And there's been years when having South Carolina at the end has toughened up their schedule. I don't know that this will make their schedule any tougher having us this year. I don't know what that's going to hold. But I think that you're still looking at Clemson probably being at least an 8-win team. So do you want to take them that far out of the top 25? I don't know. I don't like me and you were kind of talking the other day back and forth in our little group chat that we have. I hate these polls until week 4.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's why do we even do this? Why do we do this until week 4? And I've never understood, and I've had people explain it to me, and I get it. But if you win the national championship, why aren't you number 1 when the season starts the next year? How do you take the end of season rankings 1 through 25, the national champion and 24 other teams? How do they finish the season at that point? And then without playing another game, they all wind up at a different point. So,
yeah,
obviously, like, for example, with Michigan, they won the national title. Well, and they lost their coach, and they've had a lot of transfers. They've had some guys go to the NFL. So we know it's not the same Michigan team. And they got some other, troubles going on up there in Ann Arbor. So we're not expecting the same result from Michigan. But I don't, the short end of what I'm saying is I don't look at these polls that much until we start to get to like week 4 or 5. That's when I think we've got enough of a sample size that we can work with and we can say, okay, this is about right.
Who do you think is now the favorite in the ACC? Is it still Clemson?
Honestly, I would guess Miami.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I mean, it should be Florida State, but we've clearly seen that this is not the same Florida State team from last year. I mean, it's got to be Miami at this point. Or, well, I don't know. Hold on. Let me look at this because I hate this now because I don't really know who the ACC is.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't
Miami's
even...
ranked 12. You've got NC State is 24th.
So that's it. Miami's the highest ranked ACC team.
Georgia Tech is 23rd. Louisville's 22nd. So they're from 22nd through 25th. They're all ACC teams.
Like,
yeah, Miami's the highest rated one at 12.
I can't even remember all of the West Coast teams that joined the ACC. Who is it? Cal. I know it's Cal. Who else? I can't even remember. It's so confusing to me, the conference changes and all that.
Yeah,
it gets confusing. But Clemson definitely still has a shot to make it to that ACC championship game, and I wouldn't count them out of it yet. Now, if you see Clemson lose 2 or 3 ACC games, or especially if you see Clemson get blown out by some of these ACC teams, then I think you can pretty much say, all right, there's some real problems going on in Clemson, South Carolina, and Dabo has really got something he's got to fix and got to sit down and take a hard look at. But if Clemson goes 10-2 and they make it to the ACC championship game, then who knows? I mean, this is supposed to be a better Clemson team than years past, even though that wasn't reflected on Saturday. But the talk around here has been that, this was supposed to be a Clemson team that was on the upswing from what we've seen in the past few years. So just like with everything else, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Clemson usually reveals themselves by about game 6 or 7. And what I mean by that, by revealing themselves, is if we fast forward 6 or 7 weeks in the future and we're looking at a 5-1 Clemson team or a 6-1 Clemson team, then I would say, okay, watch out, because now Clemson's rolling. But if we fast forward 6 or 7 weeks in the future, and if we're looking at, say, maybe even a 4-2 Clemson team, or 5-3 Clemson team in a few more weeks, then you got some chinks in the armor, and it's not the same Clemson anymore.
I want to get your quick take on 3 of the marquee games from this week that are coming up this weekend. We've got Texas at Michigan, which I think may be interesting. I think Michigan may be a little overrated or overranked, I should say. They're in the top 10. They're 10th. And Texas moved up to number 3. So I don't know about this one. It'll be interesting to watch and see what happens. I'll give Texas the slight edge. It's interesting that it's in Ann Arbor. I don't know if that will affect Texas at all, if at all, being on the road up there. And I don't really know how strong Michigan is. I mean, they're ranked that high because they're coming off a national championship. And now they have a different coach. So I don't really know how good they really are. Anyway, what's your take on that?
I think that Ann Arbor in late October or November is a lot more threatening of an environment than Ann Arbor in late August or early September. Yep. It is a 7, or Clemson. You got those Clemson people in my brain now. Texas is a 7.5-point favorite, and the over under in that game is 42.5. If I were a betting man right now, I would take Texas to cover, and I would take the over. I think that Texas will absolutely smoke Michigan.
Okay.
I think that game will be over by halftime. Texas.
I don't know that I agree with that, but I do think Texas will win.
Texas is on a mission right now, and Texas's mission is to come into the SEC and win it the first year. Texas's mission is to come in the SEC, win the SEC in the first year, and win the playoff. That is what is in their head. Michigan is not the Michigan from last year. We've clearly established that. We know that they're not even close to the Michigan from last year. I think that game's over halfway through the second quarter. Honestly, if I were forced to bet.
All right.
If I were forced to bet right now, I would take Texas minus 10, and I would take the over on 42.5.
Okay. I think Texas by about 10 points, and I don't really have much to base that off, but
I think comfortably 10 points. I mean, I think it's going to be more than that. Like I said, I think that one might get ugly.
All right, we'll see how that goes. Then we've got Colorado at Nebraska. Matt Rule. I was kind of jealous when Nebraska hired him as their head coach because I knew he was going to turn it around for them. And I think Nebraska, they're at home. They're going to have the coaching advantage. Talent level between these two teams, probably about the same. So I'm going with the coaching advantage of Matt Rule and his staff over Deion Sanders and his staff. Now, Colorado has the quarterback receiver combo that's always dangerous. But I think Nebraska, do you know what the spread is on this one?
Give me just a second, and I can tell you.
Yeah, I think Nebraska will probably take Colorado by at least a touchdown.
That's Nebraska by 7.5. The spread, the total, the over/under is 58 points. Still, it wasn't an overly impressive game. It was 31-26. North Dakota State 31-26. I know North Dakota State's a good team for their division of football, but I think that a 5-point win against them in your home stadium versus going to Nebraska for a night game, and they haven't played Nebraska in several years, quite a few years anyway, right?
Mm-hmm. Probably since they were both in the conference. Well, might be
right
10
now,
years.
Right now, the matchup predictor from ESPN has Nebraska at 60.4% and Colorado at 39.6%. Nebraska's a 7.5-point favorite. At home, I see Nebraska winning that. I don't know that it'll be a killing. I don't think that it'll be a drumming, but I think Nebraska's going to win that one at home. I would take Nebraska. I don't know that I would even take those 7.5 points. I don't even know that I would take Nebraska to cover that 7.5 points. But I would take Nebraska to win.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. All right, and then Iowa State at Iowa. Iowa scored 40 points last week. Does that mean they have an offense now or what?
I think that means that they played absolutely nobody. I mean, they had 390 something yards, didn't they?
Yeah, something like that.
That was a lot of a good amount of yardage that they had. I don't know. Iowa, if Iowa could develop and sustain a good, solid offense, I mean, their defense is just phenomenal. I mean, they're outstanding on defense. And, everyone's always said, offense wins games, defense wins championships. I don't know how you get a championship without winning games, but that's, kind of one of those things that you hear, one of those anecdotal things that you hear. I don't know, man. I guess
Iowa beat Illinois State 40-0 week 1.
Where is that game at?
At Iowa.
There it is right there. Iowa's
2.5-point favorites.
The over-under on that's 35.5. So they're looking at a low scoring game there. Boy, that is tough.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet this one at all.
And ESPN seems to think highly of the Hawkeyes there. 71.6 is the matchup predictor in favor of Iowa.
Oh yeah.
I don't understand 71.6% matchup predictor when you only got a 2.5-point spread. That doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like you'd have a bigger spread if you had that much of a percentage gap in the matchup predictor.
Yeah, and Iowa State beat North Dakota 21-3 in week 1. I mean, I don't think you can tell much from that. Just like can't tell much from the Iowa game. I mean, this is a rivalry. I think it'll be a close game, but I have no idea who might.
Both of the quarterbacks are kind of right there neck and neck from this last weekend. Beck was 20-26 for 267. McNamara, I guess, is 21-31, 251 yards. Now, the rushing is heavily in favor in Iowa, but that's probably because more than anything, Iowa just got such a substantial lead that all they did was just feed their running backs and run the ball. I don't know, Joe. I'm something about that doesn't sit. I'm gonna take Iowa State.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Iowa State on the.
Yeah, I don't blame you. If I bullet or gun to my head, yeah, I would take Iowa State.
I'm going to take Iowa State, and one of us, you can't always just bet what Vegas tells you. You're never going to hit all of them, that way. And it's not just about betting. I'm not talking about but Vegas is usually correct. But that's only a 2.5-point line on that, and that's kind of got me wanting to hold off there on picking Iowa on that. I don't know. That Iowa team last year, and I know it's not fair to judge this year's team off of last year's team, But man, that offense that Iowa had last year was just ugly as a rat's behind.
Yeah, it's dreadful.
And I'm
They had
curious.
a
I mean,
decent defense.
yeah, they had a great defense. They had an outstanding defense last year. But I'm just curious, how much can you really change your offense in 1 year? I know they got rid of the coach's son there, Ferentz.
Mm-hmm.
I know they got a new coordinator. But I mean, how much can you really change who you are in 1 year? Can you make that drastic of a change in 1 year? So I don't know.
Probably not unless you have $20 million NIL budget.
Right. I'm gonna pick the Cyclones on that. I'm gonna pick the Cyclones on that. And
All right, I'm with you there.